They hung my mama on a tree. She's still breathing. Please, somebody help her. She was 8 years old, no shoes, no coat, nothing but a torn white nightgown, and two fists slamming against the hood of a car that cost more than her entire life. She didn't know whose car it was. She didn't care. She would have thrown herself in front of a train if it meant someone would go back into those trees and cut her mother down before the last breath left her body. The man inside that car was not a good man, but tonight he was the only man. If this story reaches your heart, subscribe and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far one little girl's scream can travel. The night Maria Vasquez stopped being a child began with a sound she would spend the rest of her life trying to forget. It was her mother's voice, but it didn't sound like her mother's voice. It sounded like something being torn in half, a scream that started human and ended somewhere else entirely, somewhere beyond language, beyond reason, beyond anything a person should ever have to hear coming out of someone they love. Maria was at her bedroom window. She had been doing her homework. Her pencil was still in her hand when the screaming started, and she gripped it so hard the wood cracked, and she looked out into the yard and she saw them. 4 men, her mother in the center, and then the rope. She didn't remember running down the stairs. She didn't remember her feet hitting the cold floor or her hands grabbing the back door handle. The next thing she knew with any clarity was that she was outside and her mother was already up. Already lifted her feet, kicking at the air. Her hands pulled above her head, wrists bound together and thrown over the lowest branch of the old oak at the edge of the yard. And the man holding the other end of the rope was laughing. Actually laughing. "Mama!" Maria screamed. "Mama!" One of the men turned. He wasn't the one laughing. He was younger, and something in his face shifted when he saw her. Something almost like shame, and he grabbed her before she could get to her mother, and she fought him. She bit him hard enough to draw blood, and he yelped, and his grip broke for just a second, and she ran. She ran, and her mother screamed her name. "Once, Maria, run. Don't stop. Find the road, and don't come back alone." And then the screaming stopped, and that was worse. The silence was so much worse than the screaming because silence meant something that Maria at 8 years old was not ready to name. She ran. She ran through the backwoods because she knew them every route and turn she had played in those trees her whole life. And now the trees that had always felt like magic felt like the inside of a nightmare. And the fog closed in around her so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. She fell twice. Both times she got up before she finished falling because her mother's voice was still in her head. Find the road, don't stop, and she was not going to stop. She was not going to stop. The road appeared out of the fog like a dream, and the lights behind the fog were the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her 8 years of life. She ran at them. She ran at the first car in the line with everything she had left, and she slammed both hands flat against the hood, and she screamed until her throat tore open. They hung my mama on a tree. She's still breathing. Please, somebody help her. The door of the car opened. The man who stepped out was tall. That was the first thing Maria registered. Tall and completely unnervingly still, like the fog had parted specifically for him and was waiting to see what he would do. He wore a dark suit, and he moved with the kind of deliberate slowness that didn't suggest hesitation, but its exact opposite. A man who never moved fast because fast was never necessary. A man who had never in his entire adult life been in a situation he didn't control. He looked at her, not through her, not past her, directly at her with eyes that were very dark and very calm, and somehow inexplicably the least frightening eyes she had seen in the last 40 minutes. "Please," Maria said. Her voice had run out of sound. The word came out as pure air. "Please." Behind him, men were already out of the other vehicles. 3, 4, 5 of them, weapons she could see at their sides, eyes sweeping the tree line with practiced efficiency. A different kind of girl would have been terrified of them. Maria was not a different kind of girl. She had already used up every unit of terror she possessed in the last half hour. She was running on something else now. Something purer and colder and completely beyond fear. She grabbed the front of the tall man's jacket with both fists. Nobody moved. The armed men froze. Maria felt rather than saw the slight tension that passed through the group, a collective intake of breath, a readiness, but the man himself didn't move at all. He just looked down at her hands, then back up at her face. "You're touching my jacket," he said. His voice was quiet, not unkind, just factual. "I know," Maria said. "I don't care." Something moved in his face, not a smile, not quite. Something smaller and more private than that. He crouched down to her level. Tell me exactly what you saw. 4 men. They came to our house. They took my mama outside and they tied her hands over a branch and her voice collapsed. She built it back up from the ground. She was still breathing and when I left, I could hear it. I ran as fast as I could. It hasn't been that long. She gripped his jacket tighter. Please, she's strong. My mama is so strong. She's still there. I know she is. Please. The man held her gaze for 2 full seconds. Then he stood up. He looked at the tree line. He looked at his men. He said one word. Hector, cars stay here. He shrugged off his jacket, the jacket Maria had been clutching, a jacket that probably cost more than everything in her bedroom combined, and wrapped it around her shoulders in a single practiced motion. The rest of you with me. He looked back down at her. You lead. Maria stared at him. You're coming. I said lead. She led. She moved fast and she didn't talk. Neither did he. His men flanked them both, and the fog swallowed all of them, and Maria's feet found the familiar roots in the fallen log and the gap between the 2 pines that she used as a landmark, and she moved through all of it on pure muscle memory. Her mind locked on one thing only, the sound of her mother's last breath, the sound she was terrified she would get to the clearing and no longer hear. The man called out quietly to the one named Luis who had come up beside him. Maria caught fragments, ambush possibility, unknown, number tree line coverage. She kept moving. He kept pace on. How long were you running before you found the road? He asked her. His voice was even, like they were walking somewhere ordinary. I don't know, Maria said. A while. I fell down twice. Were any of the men following you? One tried. He's big, but he's slow. She paused. I bit him. A pause from behind her. You bit him. Hard. She didn't look back. He let go. Another pause. Then, good. They kept moving. At 4 minutes and 20 seconds, Maria had been counting in her head. She didn't know why she couldn't stop. She reached the edge of the clearing and stopped dead. She had needed to stop before she looked. She had needed 1 second to prepare herself for the possibility that she would look into that clearing and see something that no amount of preparation could actually prepare her for. She looked. Her mother was still there. Still hanging. Her feet were not moving anymore, not kicking, but her chest. Maria stared at her mother's chest with every atom of concentration she had ever possessed. Her mother's chest was moving, rising, falling, slow, but rising and falling, still breathing. Maria's legs stopped working. She went down to one knee and she pressed her fist against her mouth, and she made a sound that she had never made before and would recognize for the rest of her life as the sound that comes out of a person when the worst possible thing fails to happen by the thinnest possible margin. She's alive, Maria whispered. She's alive. She's Dario, Marco. The tall man's voice didn't change pitch. Get her down, now, gently, hands under her arms before the rope gives. I don't want her hitting the ground. His men moved. They moved fast and without hesitation, and Maria watched them cover the distance to her mother. In seconds, watched one of them produce a knife that opened with a quiet click. Watched them work. Maria was still on one knee at the edge of the clearing. She felt a presence beside her. The tall man had lowered himself to one knee also, not to speak to her, not to comfort her. He was just there at her level watching his men work, and the fact of him being there, the solid, unmovable fact of another person beside her in that exact moment, was the thing that kept her from breaking completely apart. She's going to make it, Maria asked. She was not looking at him. She was watching her mother. She is going to make it, he said, no qualification. No, I think, or probably, or we'll do our best, just the statement flat, and certain like a fact that had already been decided. How do you know, Maria said. Because you ran fast enough. The rope came free. Dario caught Elena, and the sound she made, that broken, gasping inhale of someone surfacing from deep water, was the most extraordinary thing Maria had ever heard. She was moving before the sound finished, crossing the clearing at a run, dropping to her knees in the dirt, grabbing her mother's hand with both of hers. Mama! Her voice had no volume left. It was just breath shaped into a word. Mama, I'm here. I got help. I told you I would. I told you. Elena's eyes opened. Barely. Like the effort cost everything she had. Her lips moved. Maria. The word came out with the weight of a prayer. My baby girl. Maria pressed her forehead against her mother's forehead and held her hand and didn't say another word. She didn't need to. She just held on with both hands, the way you hold on to something when you have come close enough to losing it to understand with your whole body what losing it would mean. The tall man stood up. He watched them for a moment, then he turned away. Luis. His voice was low. Luis materialized from the dark beside him. Boss. The men. Where did they go after the girl? Ran in. Marco's been running the perimeter. There's a property north of here logging road access, lights on. One vehicle. Luis paused. Looks like they settled in. They weren't worried about being followed, Ramon said. It wasn't a question. It was an observation about the character of the men involved, and it contained within it a complete verdict. No, Luis agreed. They weren't. Ramon looked back at the woman on the ground, at the child holding her. His face gave away nothing. His face never gave anything away, but his eyes stayed on them for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Who do they work for, he asked. Don't know yet. Find out before we move. He paused. I want a name. Luis nodded and stepped back. Ramon turned to look at Elena. She had begun to focus, blinking slowly, and her eyes found him with that particular sharpness. The sharpness of a woman who had survived the last several hours through nothing but will, and whose mind was now returning to her like a tide coming back in. Who are you? She asked. Someone who was on the road, he said. No one is just on that road. Her voice was raw as stripping wood. Not at midnight, not with 4 armed men in black cars. You're perceptive. I'm a mother. It's the same thing. She held his gaze. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. By doing what? By doing what needs to be done. Elena studied him for a long moment, measuring him the way someone measures a bridge before they decide whether to walk across it. Then she looked down at Maria, who had fallen asleep sitting upright, her head against Elena's shoulder, her grip on her mother's hand completely unrelaxed. She hasn't slept without a light on since she was 3 years old, Elena said quietly. She's been terrified of the dark her whole life. She looked back at him. Tonight she ran through the woods alone at midnight to find help. She ran through everything that has ever frightened her alone in the dark barefoot. Her voice was steady. She was not asking for sympathy. She was delivering testimony. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Ramon looked at the sleeping child. Yes, he said. Then do what you need to do, Elena said, and come back. He looked at her. Come back and let her see you come back, Elena said. She needs to know that the man who went into the dark for her came out of it again. She needs to see that. Her jaw was tight. She's 8 years old and tonight changed her. Don't let the last thing that changes her be this. Ramon was quiet for a long moment. Luis stays with you, he said finally. Nobody comes into this clearing. Anyone who approaches who isn't one of my men. I understand, Luis said. Ramon looked at Maria one last time, then at Elena. Then he turned toward the trees. Marco, Dario. His voice was absolutely level, absolutely certain, the voice of a man who had already decided exactly how this night was going to end. Let's go. The farmhouse sat in a pool of yellow light at the end of the logging road, and from 40 feet back in the dark, Ramon could see every silhouette moving against the windows. He counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Elena had been right. He stood still and he counted them, and he thought about a rope in a tree and a child running barefoot through the fog, and he felt something settle in him, something cold and clear and absolute. And then he nodded to Marco, and they moved. It was over in under 4 minutes. The man named Cutter, the one with the scar and the laugh, the one who had tied the rope himself, the one who had apparently thought that hanging a woman in front of her child was a reasonable response to a death that wasn't even hers, was on his knees in the middle of the living room floor, looking up at Ramon with an expression that had cycled rapidly through defiance, calculation, and was now settling with nowhere left to go into something he wasn't used to feeling. Raw fear. You have no idea who you walked in on, Cutter said. His voice was trying to be steady. It was not succeeding. Victor Vega, Ramon said. I know exactly who you work for. Something shifted in Cutter's face. Then I know that Victor Vega's standing order for collections is no contact with the family, no physical harm. Find the debtor, recover the asset, leave the civilians alone. Ramon tilted his head slightly. You tied a woman's hands above her head and left her hanging from a tree while her 8-year-old daughter watched from a window. He paused. That wasn't Vega's order. That was yours. The silence in the room was total. The young man on the floor to Cutter's left, barely 25, shaking visibly, broke it. That's right, he said. His voice cracked. That was not the order. Cutter, he said, we needed to send a message. He said, shut your mouth, Cutter said. She laughed at him. The young man continued staring at Ramon now with the desperation of someone throwing ballast off a sinking ship. When we got there, she didn't have the money. She said she didn't know where the husband went, and Cutter asked her if she was scared, and she said no. She said, he stopped, swallowed. She said he wasn't worth being scared of. And I said, shut your mouth. Cutter's voice was raw. She said that, Ramon said. He looked at Cutter. A woman with a child inside the house, 4 men at her door, and she told you that you weren't worth being scared of. He was quiet for a moment. And that's what did it. Cutter said nothing. She was right, Ramon said. Cutter looked up at him. For just a second, something naked moved across his face. Call Vega, Ramon said. Now, tell him this debt is canceled. Tell him what happened here, all of it, including the woman, including the child, including the part you decided to add yourself, and tell him that the cancellation of this debt is what keeps me from calling him first. He waited. Because if Vega hears it from me before he hears it from you, your problem stops being me. Cutter stared at him. He'll know anyway, the young one said from the floor. Something like this Vega always finds out. Ramon looked at Cutter. Then make the call and make it first. Cutter made the call. Victor Vega listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't yell. He was silent for so long that the quality of the silence became its own form of verdict. Then he spoke for 12 seconds. Then the call ended. Cutter lowered the phone. His face was the color of chalk. Debt is cleared, he said. And the family, Ramon said. Cutter's jaw worked. Untouchable. Vega said it. Permanent. Good. Ramon looked at the other 3 men on the floor. You don't follow us. You don't look for the woman. You don't look for the child. You don't drive down that road again in this lifetime. He paused. You were on the wrong road tonight. You understand what I mean by that? Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Ramon walked out. The clearing was quiet when he returned. Maria was still asleep against her mother's shoulder. Her grip on Elena's hand not loosened by a single degree. Elena heard him coming and looked up, and she read his face before he said a word, read it the way a mother reads everything, completely and instantaneously. Done, she said. Done, he said. Elena exhaled. It was a long breath, and it carried in it every hour of the night, the rope, the cold, the waiting, the not knowing. And when it finished, her shoulders dropped, and her free hand came up to press against her mouth, and her eyes closed. The debt, she said, canceled. Vega confirmed it personally. You and Maria are permanent, his word. Nobody will come here again. Elena nodded slowly. She opened her eyes. She looked at her sleeping daughter. She didn't wake up, she said. No. She ran through everything she was afraid of, Elena said, and she made it, and now she's asleep. Her voice was barely a whisper. I used to have to check on her 3 times a night, every night. The dark terrified her. She'd wake up at 2 a.m. screaming. She stroked Maria's hair gently. Look at her. Ramon looked at her. Maria's face in sleep was completely open. All the terror of the last 2 hours was gone from it, replaced by something so simple and so absolute, it was almost startling. She looked like a child who had done everything that was asked of her and was now finally allowed to rest. She isn't afraid of the dark anymore, Elena said softly. Is she? Ramon thought about it for a moment. No, he said. I don't think she is. Because she ran through it, Elena said, and she came out the other side. And you were still there when she did, Ramon said. Elena looked up at him. Her eyes were very bright. Yes, she said, because of you. He shook his head once. Because she ran fast enough. A silence settled between them. Not empty, not awkward, but full, the way silence is full after something enormous has passed through a space and left it changed. Ramon, Elena said. He looked at her. I don't know who you are. I don't know what kind of man you are in the rest of your life. She held his gaze. I know what kind of man you were tonight. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked at Maria one last time, the sleeping child who had run barefoot through the dark and bitten a man twice her size, and absolutely refused to stop until someone went back for her mother. Get some rest, he said. Luis will stay until morning. In the morning there will be arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Elena asked. Better ones, he said simply, for both of you. He turned and walked back toward the road. Behind him in the clearing, Elena pressed her lips to the top of her daughter's head and held on with everything she had, and the forest held very still around them, and somewhere in the dark the fog was already beginning to thin. And Maria slept, deeply, without a light on, for the first time in 5 years. Morning came in through the gaps, like it had no idea what had happened in that clearing 8 hours earlier. Like it was just morning. Like the world hadn't tilted on its axis somewhere between midnight and the sound of a rope being cut. Maria woke up first. She opened her eyes, and for exactly 3 seconds, she didn't know where she was, and then she did, and she sat up fast, too fast, and her hand shot out to find her mother before her mind had fully caught up with her body. Elena was there, right there. Her hand found Maria's hand the same instant Maria reached for her, like she had been waiting for it, like some part of her had stayed awake all night just to be ready for that exact moment. I'm here, Elena said. I'm right here, baby. Maria gripped her hand and didn't let go, and didn't speak. She just breathed, in and out, counting her mother's breaths without meaning to the way she had been counting them since she was 3 years old, and had decided with the absolute certainty of a small child that her mother's breathing was the most important sound in the entire world. Luis was sitting 10 feet away back against a tree, eyes open, coffee thermos in his hand that had appeared from somewhere. He looked at Maria when she sat up, and he gave her a small nod that said everything it needed to say. You're safe. I've been here all night. Having came. The man, Maria said. Her voice was morning rough and direct. Ramon, did he come back? Not yet, Luis said. Maria looked at her mother. Elena's wrists were wrapped in strips of Luis's jacket lining improvised bandaging, clean and tight. Her face was bruised along the left jaw. Her lips were cracked, but her eyes were clear, and her grip on Maria's hand was firm, and that was the only data point that mattered. How do you feel? Maria asked her. Like I've been through something terrible, Elena said, and like I survived it. She reached up and tucked a piece of hair behind Maria's ear. How do you feel? Maria thought about it with the serious, complete consideration she gave to most questions. Hungry, she said finally. Elena made a sound that was half laugh and half something else entirely, and she pulled her daughter against her, and Maria let herself be held without squirming, which was unusual enough that Luis looked away to give them the privacy of it. They stayed like that for a while. Then Maria pulled back and looked at her mother's wrists. Does it hurt? She asked. Yes, Elena said, no softening it. Maria had earned the truth. Are they broken? I don't think so. We need a doctor. I know. Ramon said there would be arrangements. Maria said the word arrangements with an 8-year-old's particular blend of skepticism and hope, the way children say words they've borrowed from adults without being entirely sure they trust them yet. Do you believe him? Elena looked at her daughter for a moment. Yes, she said. I believe him. Why, Maria asked. You don't know him. No, Elena agreed. But I know what he did, and I know that a man who does what he did last night doesn't say a word he doesn't mean. She paused. Men like him, the way he carried himself, the way his people moved when he spoke, that's not someone who makes promises lightly. That's someone for whom a promise is a contract. Maria absorbed this. What kind of man is he? She asked. Really? Elena was quiet for a moment. The kind the world doesn't make room for in the daylight, she said carefully. But sometimes in the dark, that's exactly the kind of man you need. Maria thought about that for a long time. Then she heard the car. It wasn't the same car. It was a single black SUV, and it came down a fire road Maria hadn't known existed, and it stopped 30 feet from the clearing, and two people got out. One was a woman in dark clothes carrying a medical bag. The other was a man Maria didn't recognize, older, silver-haired, with the deliberate walk of someone who had been doing important things for a very long time and had stopped being impressed by any of them. The woman went straight to Elena. The older man stopped in front of Luis and exchanged 4 words too low to hear, then nodded and stood aside. Maria stood up. She was still wearing Ramon's jacket. The woman with the medical bag glanced at her. "You, Maria?" "Yes." "Okay, Maria, I'm Dr. Reyes. I'm going to take care of your mom's wrists and do a full check, and then I'm going to look at your feet." She set the bag down. "Your mom first, then you. Deal." "Is she going to be okay?" Maria asked. Dr. Reyes met her eyes directly. "Her wrists aren't broken. She has soft tissue damage and bruising. She needs rest, and she needs to stay off her feet for a day or two, but yes." She held Maria's gaze. "She is going to be okay." Maria nodded, stepped back, let the doctor work. The silver-haired man came to stand beside her while the doctor worked. He didn't introduce himself. He looked at Maria in the way that some adults looked at children, not down exactly, but like he was making a careful assessment and was not going to insult her by pretending otherwise. "You're the one who stopped the convoy last night," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Maria said. "Ramon sent me." He reached into his jacket and produced a folded piece of paper. "This is an address. When the doctor clears your mother to be moved maybe an hour from now, there will be a safe house waiting for you. New location, stocked, clean, a bed for both of you." He held the paper out. "You hold on to that." Maria took the paper. She looked at it, looked back at him. "Who pays for it?" Something moved in the man's face, not quite a smile, more like genuine surprise. "Ramon does," he said. Why?" Maria asked. "Because he said so." "That's not an answer," Maria said. The silver-haired man looked at her for a long moment. Then he crouched down slightly, not all the way. He had the kind of knees that didn't bend easily anymore, and he looked at her at something approaching eye level. "You stopped his car last night," he said. "You grabbed Ramon Ortega's jacket in front of 6 armed men. Do you know how many people have ever done that and lived to talk about it?" Maria stared at him. "How many won?" he said. Maria considered this seriously. "I didn't know who he was," she said. "I know." The man straightened up. "That's exactly why." He looked at Elena, who was watching this exchange over Dr. Reyes' shoulder with an expression that combined pain and complete focused attention. "Your daughter is something else, Mrs. Vasquez." "I know what she is," Elena said quietly. "Ramon knows too," the man said. "That's why he sent me." They were in the safe house by noon. It was a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building that didn't look like anything special from the outside, which was Maria understood entirely the point. Inside, it was clean and warm, and there was food in the refrigerator, and 2 beds with actual blankets and a bathroom with hot water that worked immediately, not after 3 minutes of running cold like the pipes at their old house. Elena slept for 4 hours. Dr. Reyes had given her something mild for the pain and told her body to do what it already desperately wanted to do, which was shut down and begin the slow, unglamorous work of recovery. Maria sat in the chair beside her bed and did not sleep. She was not ready to sleep again. She had too many things to think about. The safe house had a window that faced east, and the afternoon light came through it at an angle that made the whole room feel oddly peaceful, and Maria sat in that light and thought about her father. Her father who had been gone for 3 months. Her father who had left a debt behind him the way some men leave laundry carelessly with a vague intention to deal with it later. That never arrived. Her father who had looked at his daughter the morning he left and said, "I'll be back before you know it," and had not so far been back. The men who came last night had come because of him. Her mother had hung from a tree because of him. Maria turned this over in her mind with the same serious, methodical attention she gave everything, and she felt something settle in her chest. That was not grief exactly and not rage exactly, but something adjacent to both that she didn't have a name for yet. She was 8. She would have a name for it eventually. For now, she just sat with it and let it be what it was. Her phone, which had been in her pajama pocket when she ran, which had survived the woods and the road and everything, showed 2 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. She stared at the screen. Both calls had come in at 3 in the morning. She pressed call back. It rang twice. Then a voice she did not recognize. Male. Calm. Maria Vasquez. Not a question. Her stomach dropped. Who is this? She said. Someone who knows where you are, the voice said, and who wants you to give your mother a message. Maria's hand tightened on the phone. What message? Tell her we know where Roberto went. A pause. Tell her if she wants to know too, she should answer when we call. The line went dead. Maria sat very still in her chair for a long moment. Then she looked at her mother sleeping. Then she looked at the phone in her hand. Then she stood up and walked to the front door of the apartment where the silver-haired man she had learned his name was Ernesto was sitting in the hallway outside reading something on his phone. I need you to call Ramon, she said. Ernesto looked up, read her face, put his phone away. What happened? Someone called me. They said they know where my father is. She held out her phone. The call came at 3 a.m, before we were here, before we were moved. She held his gaze. Which means someone knew where we were last night, in the clearing. Ernesto took the phone. His face did not change expression, but something shifted behind his eyes, a rapid, precise recalibration, the kind of adjustment made by people who spent their lives operating in situations where a single piece of new information could change everything. Stay inside, he said. Lock the door. Call Ramon first, Maria said. I'm already calling Ramon, Ernesto said. He was already dialing. Go inside, Maria, right now. She went inside. She locked the door. She stood with her back against it and listened to her mother breathe and held her own phone in both hands and did not move. Ramon answered on the first ring. He was in his car 40 minutes away heading back toward the city when Ernesto's name came up on the screen. He answered immediately. He listened without interrupting. By the time Ernesto finished, Ramon had already redirected the driver. Read me the number that called her, he said. Ernesto read it. Ramon was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Say that again. Ernesto said it again. Ramon closed his eyes, opened them. His jaw was tight. That's a 614 area code, he said. I know, Ernesto said. That's Eddie Mora's area. I know, Ernesto said again, and his voice carried something in it that wasn't quite dread, but was dread's close cousin. Ramon, if Eddie Mora's people were watching the road last night, then they saw everything, Ramon said. They saw me get out of the car. They saw me go into the woods. They saw the whole thing. He paused. And now they're calling an 8-year-old girl at 3 a.m. Why, Ernesto said. What does Mora want with a woman whose husband skipped on a debt to Vega? Vega canceled the debt. That should be the end of. It's not about the debt, Ramon said. It was never about the debt. He was already thinking faster than he was talking, his mind moving through the grid of names and connections and favors owed and history accumulated, finding the node where this had all connected. Roberto Vasquez, that's the husband's name. Say that name to me and tell me where I know it from. A pause. I don't think Ernesto. A longer pause. Then Roberto Vasquez, 3 years ago, the Harmon warehouse situation. He was the accountant. Ramon said nothing for a moment. He was Mora's accountant, Ernesto said slowly, the pieces clicking into place one by one in his voice. He handled the books for Mora's operation for 4 years. If he disappeared and he left behind, he didn't just skip on a debt to Vega, Ramon said. He took something. And whatever he took was from Mora, not Vega. Vega was just a collection mechanism. He paused. Roberto Vasquez has been running for 3 months with something that belongs to Eddie Mora. And Mora just watched me save the man's wife and child. The silence on the line was very heavy. He's going to use them, Ernesto said. Yes. To get to Vasquez. Yes. And now he knows you're involved, which means I'm involved, Ramon said flatly. Whether I intended to be or not, I walked into this last night and Eddie Mora watched me do it. And now there is no version of this where I walk back out and pretend I wasn't there. Ramon, Ernesto's voice was careful. Eddie Mora is not Victor Vega. Vega is business. Mora is... I know what Mora is, Ramon said. He doesn't cancel debts. He doesn't negotiate. Ernesto. Ramon's voice cut clean through the sentence. Tell Maria that I'm coming. Tell her to keep the door locked and not open it for anyone who isn't you or me. He paused. And tell her she did the right thing, calling you immediately. Tell her that. He ended the call. So the knock came 45 minutes later. 3 knocks, then 2, then 1. A pattern Ernesto had given Maria before she locked the door. She checked through the peephole anyway, the way her mother had always taught her to check, and then she unlocked the door. Ramon walked in. He was still in the same clothes from the previous night. He looked exactly the same as he had in the fog, the same stillness, the same absolute quality of composure, except that his eyes, when they found Maria, had something in them that hadn't been there before. Not worry exactly, something more precise than worry. "You made the right call," he said immediately, telling Ernesto. "I know," Maria said. "Good." He looked toward the bedroom. "Your mother's resting." "Yes, she doesn't know about the call yet." Maria looked at him steadily. "I want to know what's happening before you tell her. She's been through enough. She doesn't need to wake up to something new without understanding what it is first." Ramon looked at her for a moment. "How old are you?" 8.5. 8.5, he repeated. Something shifted in his expression. Then he pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. "Sit down," he said. "I'm going to tell you some things." Maria sat down. Ramon sat across from her. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, not the posture of a crime lord delivering bad news, but the posture of a person who had decided to talk to another person honestly. "The men who came to your house last night," he said, "they came because of your father." "I know that," Maria said. "Your father worked for a man named Eddie Mora. He kept Mora's books. For 4 years, he handled the financial records for Mora's entire operation." He paused. "3 months ago, your father disappeared. And when he disappeared, something that belonged to Mora disappeared with him." Maria was very still. "What's something?" "A drive. An external hard drive containing every financial record, every account, every transaction Mora has made in the last 4 years." He held her gaze. "In the wrong hands, that drive ends Eddie Mora's operation permanently, puts him away for the rest of his life." Maria processed this. "My father took it." "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know yet," Ramon said. "But Mora watched everything that happened last night. And this morning someone called you." His eyes were steady. "That means Mora knows where you are, which means the safe house needs to change. It also means Mora is going to try to use you and your mother to get your father to surface." "My father won't surface," Maria said. Her voice was flat. "He's been gone 3 months without a single call. He's not going to come back because Mora has us." Ramon looked at her. "You believe that?" Maria looked at the table, then back up. "I don't know what I believe about my father right now," she said. "I know he left. I know he left his debts and he left his family and he didn't call." Her jaw was tight. If he took something from a dangerous man and ran, then either he was very scared or he had a reason. She paused. "I don't know which one it is, but I'm not going to count on him showing up." "Then we handle it without him," Ramon said. "How?" "I find out where he is before Mora does. I find out what's on that drive and why your father took it. And I deal with Eddie Mora in a way that makes you and your mother permanently not useful to him as leverage." He said it simply, like a list of tasks, not a plan born of heroism, a plan born of someone who had decided that this particular problem was now his problem and had begun working through it with the same methodical precision he applied to everything. Maria stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I got out of the car," he said. "That's not an answer." "No," he said, "it's not." He leaned back slightly. "I have been many things in my life, Maria. I have done a great many things that I would not defend to a person who asked me to defend them. I have operated in a world where the math of right and wrong gets complicated very quickly." He paused. "But I got out of that car last night, and the moment I got out, the math became very simple." Maria held his gaze. "What's the math?" "You ran through everything that frightened you to save your mother," he said. "I am not going to be the man who let that be for nothing." The room was very quiet. Then Maria said, "My mother is going to wake up and she is going to have questions that I don't know how to answer." "I'll answer them," Ramon said. "She's not going to like some of the answers." "No," he agreed. "She's not. She's going to be scared." "Yes, but she's not going to run," Maria said. And there was something in the way she said it, a certainty that was not hope, but knowledge, the specific knowledge of a child who had been studying her mother her whole life. She doesn't run. She never runs. I know, Ramon said. How do you know you just met her? Because you don't run either, he said, and you learned it from somewhere. Maria looked at him for a long moment. Something in her face settled a fine tension she'd been holding since she sat down, releasing by degrees, not all at once, but enough. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, he said. Okay, I trust you. She said it like a decision made after careful deliberation. Not blind faith, not desperation. A reasoned conclusion. I don't trust easily. My mother says that about me. She says I'm too serious for 8.5. She held his gaze. But I trust you. I want you to know that. Ramon looked at her for a moment. I won't waste it, he said. Elena's voice came from the bedroom doorway. Someone want to tell me who Eddie Mora is and why his name just woke me up out of a dead sleep. Both of them turned. Elena was standing in the doorway, pale, one arm braced against the frame for support, her wrapped wrists held carefully at her sides. She had clearly been awake for at least part of the conversation. Her eyes were fully alert, fully focused, and fully unamused. How long have you been standing there? Ramon asked. Long enough, Elena said. She looked at her daughter. Maria. He was going to tell you everything, Maria said immediately. That's why I didn't wake you first. I wanted to understand it before you heard it. Elena looked at her daughter for a moment with an expression that held in equal and complicated measure frustration and love and exhaustion and an overwhelming pride that she didn't have the energy to fully express right now. Come here, she said. Maria crossed the room and stood beside her mother, and Elena put one wrapped hand carefully on top of her daughter's head without resting any weight on her wrist. Then she looked at Ramon. Tell me about Eddie Mora, she said. All of it, starting with my husband. Ramon pulled out a second chair. Sit down, Mrs. Vasquez. I've been lying down for 4 hours, Elena said. I'll stand. Ramon looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded. Your husband didn't run from a debt, he said. He ran with evidence. Evidence that could destroy Eddie Mora's entire organization. He paused. The question is whether he ran to save himself or whether he ran to use it. Elena's expression didn't change. Her grip on the doorframe didn't change. But something moved through her eyes, a ripple of something complex, something that had clearly been building for 3 months without a name. Roberto always said he was going to fix things, she said quietly. That was his line. I'm going to fix this, Elena. I'm going to make it right. He said it about everything, money problems, work problems, the leak in the kitchen ceiling. She was quiet for a moment. I stopped believing it about the small things years ago. Her eyes found Ramon's. But maybe I was wrong to stop. Maybe, Ramon said, or maybe he finally meant it. Where is he? Elena asked. I don't know yet, Ramon said, but I'm going to find out. He held her gaze. And when I do, Mrs. Vasquez, you are going to have to make a decision about what happens next. Because whatever your husband took from Eddie Mora, depending on what it is and who he intended to give it to this situation, is either almost over or it is considerably more complicated than a debt collection gone wrong. Elena absorbed that. Her jaw was set. How long to find him? Yes. 48 hours, Ramon said. Maybe less. And in 48 hours, you and Maria are safe here. Nobody outside this building knows this address. The call came to Maria's phone before we were moved, Elena said. I know, the phone is handled. Ernesto's already running a trace on the number, and Maria's phone has been cloned to a clean device. The original is dark. He paused. I don't do things slowly, Mrs. Vasquez. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at her daughter. Maria was watching her mother with that same focused, absolute attention she always gave her, the attention of a child who had decided very early and very deliberately that her mother was the most important subject in the universe. She trusts you, Elena said. Not to Maria, to Ramon. She told me, Ramon said. My daughter does not trust easily, Elena said. She told me that too, Ramon said. Elena closed her eyes for one moment. Then she opened them. Then I suppose we don't have 48 hours to waste. No, Ramon said. We don't. He stood up from the table and reached into his jacket and placed a phone on the table. Clean. New. My number is the only number in that device. You call me if anything happens, anything no matter how small. He looked at Maria. Both of you bow. Maria picked up the phone. She looked at it, then she looked up at Ahan. What if you don't answer? I'll answer, he said. What if you can't? Then Ernesto answers. Same result. He moved toward the door. Lock this behind me. Ramon, Elena said. He stopped. My husband, she said. Her voice was controlled, careful, but underneath it something raw and unresolved. Whatever he did, whatever reason he had. She paused. Is he in danger? Ramon turned to look at her, and for the first time since the fog on the road the night before, his face showed something unguarded, something honest and quiet, and not entirely free of grief. Yes, he said. The door closed. The lock turned. Maria stood in the kitchen, holding the clean phone and listening to her mother's breathing, and staring at the closed door, and somewhere in her chest, the thing that had been sitting without a name since she sat in the morning light was beginning slowly to find one. The 48 hours Ramon had promised lasted exactly 19 before everything changed. It was Elena who heard it first. A sound in the hallway that wasn't Ernesto's walk. Ernesto moved with a slight drag on the left foot. An old injury, she had already memorized it the way you memorize every sound outside a door when you are a woman waiting in a room with her child and a locked door between her and everything uncertain. This was 2 feet, even, deliberate, stopping outside the apartment and not knocking. She was out of bed and across the room before the thought fully formed. Maria! Her voice was barely air. Bathroom. Now. Maria didn't ask why. She had learned sometime in the last 18 hours to move on her mother's voice, the way she had once moved on instinct. In the woods faceted fast, no questions, trust the signal. She was off the couch and through the bathroom door in 4 seconds, and Elena pulled it shut behind her and stood in the main room and picked up the clean phone Ramon had left. She dialed. It rang once. There's someone outside the door, she said the instant the line opened. Not Ernesto, 2 feet, no limp, standing still. Ramon's voice came back immediately. Don't open it. Where's Maria? Bathroom. Good. Stay on the line. She heard him talking to someone else, muffled fast. Then, Ernesto went to the car 11 minutes ago. He should be back up. A pause. Hold on. The person outside the door knocked. 3 times regular. Not the pattern. Elena did not move. Wrong pattern, she said into the phone. I know, Ramon said. Don't open it. A voice came through the door. Male, unhurried. Mrs. Vasquez, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because of your husband. He sent me. Elena's hand tightened on the phone. Ramon, she said quietly. I heard him, Ramon said. Do not open that door. He said Roberto sent him. I heard that too. His voice was controlled, but she could hear underneath it the rapid recalibration happening in real time, the same thing she had seen in Ernesto's eyes when Maria showed him the phone. It could be true. It could also be exactly what Mora would say to get you to open the door. I know, Elena said. Ask him a question only Roberto would know the answer to. Elena thought for 2 seconds. Roberto has a scar on his left hand. Ask him how he got it. A pause. Ask him yourself. I need you to be the one asking. She raised her voice toward the door. How did my husband get the scar on his left hand? Silence for a moment. Then his daughter. She was 2 years old. She pulled a glass off the kitchen counter and he caught it before it hit the floor and it broke in his hand. Another pause. Her name is Maria. She's 8 years old. He talks about her every day. Elena pressed her hand flat against the door. Ramon, she said. I'm already moving, he said. 12 minutes. Don't open the door until I'm there. Tell him to wait. He might not wait. Make him wait, Ramon said. Elena, make him wait. She took one breath. Then she raised her voice again. My husband trusts you enough to send you here. He trusts me enough to have given me that address, the man said, which tells you something about what he knows and who he knows it from. Step back from the door, Elena said. I'm not opening it until I have more than an answer to one question. A pause. Fair enough, the man said. I'll be here. Ramon made it in 9 minutes. He came through the stairwell, not the elevator, and he came fast, not running, because running announced itself, but the kind of controlled speed that covered ground without broadcasting it. Ernesto was 2 steps behind him, and behind Ernesto was Marco. And when they came around the corner of the hallway, the man outside the apartment turned and had one hand inside his jacket before he registered who he was looking at and made the extremely rapid decision to bring that hand back out empty. He was mid-40s, heavy through the shoulders, a face that had been rearranged at least once by something harder than a fist. He looked at Ramon, and he did not pretend not to know who he was. "Ramon Ortega," he said. "You have a name," Ramon said. "Carver," the man said. "I work independent. Roberto Vasquez hired me 6 weeks ago to keep eyes on his family and get them out if things moved." He looked at the closed apartment door. "Things moved." "Why didn't you move them last night?" Ramon said. The question was quiet and absolutely direct. Before 4 men tied a woman to a tree. Something moved through Carver's face. Not quite guilt, the cousin of guilt. "I was 20 minutes out when it went sideways. By the time I got to the property, they were already in the woods." He paused. "And then you were there, and it was handled." "It was handled," Ramon repeated. "Yes." "By me," Ramon said, "not by the man who hired you to handle it." Carver had the sense not to answer that. Ramon looked at him for a long moment. "Where is Roberto Vasquez?" "He wants to come in," Carver said. "That's the message. He's ready to come in. He wants to know if his family is safe." "His family is safe because of what I did last night," Ramon said. "Not because of anything he did." "I understand that." "Does he?" Carver met his eyes. "He's been carrying something for 3 months that's put a target on everyone he loves. He knows what he did. He's not trying to get out from under it. He's trying to land it somewhere that doesn't end with his wife and daughter being used as a collection mechanism." He paused. "The drive, he wants to hand it off. But not to just anyone." "To who?" Ramon said. Carver looked at him steadily. "To you." The hallway was very quiet for a moment. "Why me?" Ramon said. "Because you got out of that car last night," Carver said simply. "He was watching. He's been watching the road since midnight. He saw the whole thing." He paused. He said if Ramon Ortega gets out of a car for a child, he doesn't know that's the man he wants holding what he took from Eddie Mora. Ramon said nothing. His face said nothing. But Ernesto, standing 2 feet behind him, made the smallest sound in the back of his throat that meant he had a thought he wasn't voicing, and Ramon heard it and chose not to ask. "Bring him in," Ramon said. Elena opened the door when she heard the pattern, 3, 2, 1. She opened it and found Ramon, and behind Ramon a man she didn't know, and behind that man a look in Ramon's eyes that she was beginning to recognize, the look of someone who has just received information that makes an already complicated situation considerably more complicated and has already begun working through what to do about it. "Where's Maria?" he said first. "Bathroom," Elena said. Then louder, "Baby, you can come out." The bathroom door opened. Maria came out, saw the unfamiliar man, and stopped. She looked at him with the specific, careful attention she gave everything, the look that seemed to take inventory of a person before deciding how to file them. "Who are you?" "Oh," she said. "My name is Carver," the man said. "Your father sent me." The room went very still. Maria looked at her mother. Elena's face was controlled, carefully controlled. The control of a woman who had decided somewhere in the last 18 hours that she was going to feel every single thing she needed to feel, but she was going to feel it on her own time and not in front of her daughter or a room full of strangers. "Where is he?" Maria said. Her voice was flat, the same tone she had used on the road at midnight, stripped of everything except the essential question. "Close," Carver said. "How close?" Maria said. Carver looked at Ramon. Ramon nodded. "He's in the building," Carver said. "Parking structure, ground level. He's been there since 4 this morning." Elena made a sound. It was very small and very controlled, and it was the sound of a woman receiving information that she had been waiting 3 months to receive and had convinced herself sometime in the 2nd month that she would never actually receive. Maria looked at her mother, then back at Carver. "He was there all night while my mother was recovering, while we were here." "He was there," Carver said carefully, "because coming into the building before he knew it was secure would have put everyone in it at risk, including you." "He could have called," Maria said. Carver had no answer for that. "He could have called 3 months ago," Maria said. The flatness in her voice had an edge, now something underneath it that had been pressing up against the surface for hours. "He could have called any day in the last 3 months. He could have called when he left. He could have—" She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "Never mind." "Maria," Elena said softly. "I'm fine," Maria said. And the way she said it with complete control at 8.5 years old was one of the most heartbreaking things Ramon had witnessed in a long career of witnessing difficult things. He looked at Elena. "It's your call," he said. He comes up or he doesn't. Your decision entirely. Elena looked at him for a moment. Does it matter for the drive for Mora? Does he need to be here for you to deal with it? It helps, Ramon said honestly. The drive is more useful if I understand what's on it and what he intended to do with it. That conversation is easier in person. Then he comes up, Elena said. But she looked at Maria, then back at Ramon. 10 minutes. I want 10 minutes first. Done, Ramon said. He looked at Carver. Bring him up in 10 minutes. Marco waits with him until then. Carver nodded and stepped back into the hallway. Elena turned to her daughter. Come sit with me, she said. Mama, I'm not 5, Maria said. You don't have to, Maria. Elena's voice was gentle and immovable. Come sit with me. Maria sat. They sat together on the edge of the bed, and Elena took her daughter's hand in both of her wrapped hands, careful of the bandaging. And she held it, and she was quiet for a moment. Your father didn't leave because of us, she said. I want you to know that. Whatever you've been thinking for 3 months, whatever story you've been building in your head about why he went, he didn't go because of you. He didn't go because of me. Her voice was steady. He went because he was in something that he couldn't get out of the normal way, and he made a choice. It wasn't the right choice. It wasn't the choice I would have wanted him to make. She paused. But it wasn't because of you. Maria looked at their joined hands. I know, she said. Do you? Elena asked. I've known for a while, Maria said. I'm not stupid. I know what he was mixed up in. I heard things. I'm 8, not 2. She looked up at her mother. I was angry because he didn't call, that's all. I'm not angry because he left. I'm angry because he could have called and he didn't, and we were... Her voice broke. Just once, just a hairline crack. We were alone. For 3 months we were alone, and last night you were hanging from a tree, and I was running through the dark by myself, and he was in a parking structure 2 miles away for all I know, and he didn't... Hey, Elena pulled her closer. Hey. Maria pressed her face against her mother's shoulder. She didn't cry. She was past crying. She was in the place that Maria Vasquez had lived for 8.5 years, the place beyond crying where things were just true, and you held them, and you kept moving. He's here now, Elena said quietly. I know. That means something. I know, Maria said. I just need a minute to decide how much. Elena pressed her lips to the top of her daughter's head. Ramon was standing near the window, back turned, giving them something that was not privacy, but was the best available approximation of it. His phone was in his hand, and he was running the information Carver had delivered through everything he knew about Eddie Mora's operation, which was considerable. If Roberto Vasquez had the financial records for 4 years of Mora's business accounts, transactions, names, locations, the value of that drive was not theoretical. It was catastrophic for Mora and potentially transformative for whoever held it. The federal angle alone, the possibility that Vasquez had intended to hand it to law enforcement rather than use it as personal leverage, changed the geometry of everything. The knock came. Not the pattern, a different knock. 3 even beats. Ramon crossed the room and opened the door. The man in the hallway was thin in a way that 3 months of running did to people. Dark circles that had moved in permanently. Clothes that fit him like they belonged to a slightly larger version of himself. His eyes found Ramon, first a quick assessing look that confirmed he had done his research, and then moved past Ramon into the room and found Elena, and stopped. Roberto Vasquez had not, Ramon noted, looked at his daughter first. He had looked at his wife. That told Ramon something. He wasn't sure yet what it told him, but he filed it. Elena, Roberto said. His voice cracked on the second syllable. Elena stood up from the bed. She stood very straight, both wrapped wrists held carefully at her sides, and she looked at her husband across the room with an expression that held 3 months of fear and silence, and a night on a tree in the fog, and everything that came after compressed into a single, sustained, unreadable look. You have a lot to explain, she said. I know, Roberto said. I know I do. I'm sorry. I'm so... Not yet, Elena said. Not yet. Maria first. Roberto's eyes moved to his daughter. Maria was standing beside the bed. She was still wearing Ramon's jacket. She had been wearing it since the road, sleeping in it, moving through the entire 48 hours wrapped in it, like the jacket itself was a kind of armor. She looked at her father with those serious, complete eyes, and she didn't run to him, and she didn't cry, and she didn't speak first. She waited. Roberto crossed the room and he crouched down in front of her, and his face did something that faces do when a person has been holding grief back for a very long time, and suddenly the specific thing they have been grieving is standing in front of them, real and whole and waiting. His jaw worked. His eyes went bright. Maria, Edmond, said, "Hi, Dad," Maria said. The simplicity of it, the absolute devastating simplicity of those two words delivered in that tone made something in the room shift. Even Ramon looked away. "I'm sorry," Roberto said. "I'm sorry I left without telling you. I'm sorry I didn't call. I'm sorry about—" He stopped. His voice gave out. He pressed his fist against his mouth for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry about last night. I should have come sooner. I should have—" "You were watching," Maria said. "Yes." "From the parking structure?" "From the tree line," Roberto said quietly. "I was in the woods. I saw—" He stopped again. Maria stared at him. "You were in the woods?" "Yes." "While Mama was— oh." She stopped. Something moved through her face. "You were there." "I know." "Then why didn't you—" "Because they would have taken me," Roberto said. His voice was raw. "Maria, if I had come out of those trees, Mora's men would have had me, and the drive would have been in their hands. And everything I've spent 3 months trying to do would have been—" He stopped. "It doesn't matter. I know how it sounds." "It sounds like you chose the drive over your mother," Maria said. The room held very still. Roberto closed his eyes. "Yes," he said. "That's what it sounds like." "Was it the right choice?" Maria asked. He opened his eyes. He looked at his daughter, 8.5 years old, 2 nights, without real sleep, barefoot and running and brave in ways most adults never manage to be. And he said, "I don't know. I've been asking myself that question for 6 hours and I still don't know." Maria looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and she wrapped her arms around his neck. And she held on not with the desperation of the night before, but with something harder and quieter than that. Something that was anger and love in the same grip, inseparable, the way those things always are when the person holding them is someone you belong to. Roberto held her back. He held her like a man holding something he had been terrified of losing and was only now allowing himself to understand how close he had come. Elena watched them. Her face was controlled. Her eyes were not. Ramon gave them 8 minutes. Then he said Roberto's name once quietly, and Roberto stood up and looked at him, and the look exchanged between the two men contained a rapid and complete acknowledgement of what the situation was and what needed to happen next. "The drive," Ramon said. Roberto reached into his jacket. He produced a small external hard drive, black, no larger than a deck of cards. He held it for a moment with the slightly dazed expression of a man who has been carrying a grenade for 90 days and is only now fully registering that he is about to hand it to someone else. 4 years of Mora's accounts, Roberto said. 12 shell companies, 6 overseas accounts, transaction records going back to 2020, names of contacts in law enforcement he has on payroll. He paused. "And one other thing." "What other thing?" Ramon said. "Evidence that Eddie Mora ordered the killing of a federal judge," Roberto said. "Judge Alan Harrigan ruled against him in a racketeering case in 2022. Mora had him killed 6 months later and made it look like a robbery." He held Ramon's gaze. "The payment authorization is on that drive, in Mora's own handwriting, scanned and saved." The silence was total. Ramon looked at the drive, then at Roberto. "You've had this for 3 months." "Yes. And you've been sitting on it." "I've been trying to find someone I trusted enough to hand it to," Roberto said. "The FBI contact I was going to use, I found out 2 weeks ago he's one of the names on the drive. Mora's payroll." He paused. "I didn't know who else. I didn't know who was clean." "Why me?" Ramon said. "I'm not exactly known for being clean." "No," Roberto said, "but you're known for being independent. You don't work for Mora. You don't work for Vega. You don't work for anyone above you." He paused. "And I watched you get out of that car for my daughter." His voice was quiet. "A man who does that without knowing who she is or what she's connected to, that's a man making a decision that doesn't come from politics or strategy. That comes from somewhere else." Ramon looked at him for a long moment. Then he took the drive. He turned it over in his hand once, Then he looked at Ernesto. Ernesto pulled a laptop from the bag he was carrying and set it on the kitchen table, and Ramon plugged in the drive, and for 40 seconds, the room was completely silent except for the sound of files loading. Then Ramon looked at the screen, and his face, which had given away nothing for the last 18 hours, went very still in a way that was different from his usual stillness. This was the stillness of someone who has just seen something that recalibrates everything. "What?" Ernesto said. Ramon turned the laptop so Ernesto could see. Ernesto looked at the screen. His face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession: recognition, calculation, and something that in another man might have been alarm, but in Ernesto came out as the very careful absence of any expression at all. "Is that?" Ernesto started. "Yes," Ramon said. "That's not just Mora's operation," Ernesto said. "No," Ramon said. "It's not." Roberto was watching them. "What is it?" he said. "What do you see that I missed?" Ramon looked at him. "How carefully did you go through these files?" "Enough to know about the judge," Roberto said. "Enough to know the account numbers. I'm an accountant, not a what are you looking at." Ramon turned the laptop back toward him and pointed to a specific file name. Roberto leaned in, read it, pulled back. The color left his face. "I didn't see that," he said. "I know," Ramon said. "What does that mean?" Elena said. She had been standing against the bedroom doorway, arms folded, watching everything. "What is it?" Ramon closed the laptop. He looked at Elena, then at Maria, then back at Elena with the look of a man who has just made a very specific calculation about how much information to deliver and in what order. "It means," Ramon said carefully, "that what your husband took from Eddie Mora is not just evidence against Eddie Mora." Elena stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Mora has been operating as a contractor," Ramon said. "The judge is killing several others. They were contracted. The money came from outside his organization." He paused. "And the name of the contractor is in these files." "Who?" Roberto said. His voice had dropped to almost nothing. Ramon looked at him for a moment. "A name that makes Eddie Mora the smallest problem in this room," he said. "A name that means from this moment forward, the people who want this drive back are not a collection crew with a rope. They are people with resources that make last night look like a misunderstanding." He picked up the drive and closed his hand around it. "And it means that I need to make some calls immediately, before anyone else figures out that this drive has surfaced." "Who do you call?" Roberto said. "If the FBI contact is compromised." "Not the FBI," Ramon said. "Then who?" Elena said. Ramon was already moving toward the door. "Someone who has been looking for this specific name for 2 years," he said. "Someone who, when they see what's on this drive, will move fast enough to make Mora and everyone above him understand that the window for solving this quietly is now closed." He looked at Elena. "You and Maria stay here. Roberto stays here." He looked at Roberto directly. "You do not move. You do not call anyone. You do not open that door." "And if someone comes," Roberto said. "Marco is outside," Ramon said. "And Marco has been awake for 36 hours and is in an extremely uncomplicated mood." He was at the door. His hand was on the handle. "Ramon." Maria's voice. He turned. She was standing in the middle of the room, still in his jacket, her father's hand in hers. She had taken it at some point without anyone noticing, just quietly reached over and taken it, and she was looking at Ramon with those eyes that did not ask for reassurance, that only asked for truth. "The name on the drive," she said. "Are we in more danger now than we were this morning?" He held her gaze. "Yes," he said. She absorbed that, nodded once with the composure of someone twice her age and half her fear. "Okay," she said, "then go make your calls." He went. The door closed. Roberto looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then at the closed door. "Who is he?" he said quietly. "He's the man who got out of the car," Elena said. From the other side of the door, they heard Ramon's voice, low, fast, a single sentence delivered into his phone, with the clipped certainty of someone who does not leave messages and does not repeat himself. "We need to meet tonight," Ramon said. "I have the Mora files, all of them, and you need to see who's at the top." Then silence. Then from the kitchen table, the quiet screen of the laptop closed, but still running, its light pulsing in the dimness, like something that had been kept underground for a very long time and had only just found its way to the surface. The name on the drive was Senator Dale Whitmore. Ramon said it out loud exactly once to Ernesto in the stairwell, with the door closed behind him and Marco stationed at the apartment entrance. He said it the way you say something you have been turning over in your mind for 20 minutes, testing its weight, verifying that it is as heavy as you think it is, and confirming that yes, it is heavier. Ernesto didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. That was unusual. Ernesto was not a man who ran out of words. Dale Whitmore, Ernesto finally said, Senate Intelligence Committee, 3 terms, has been publicly calling for a federal crackdown on organized crime for the last 2 years. While privately contracting Eddie Moore to kill the judge who was about to expose the same crackdown as a cover operation, Ramon said, yes. Judge Harrigan was going to run against the committee's surveillance overreach, Ernesto said slowly. That was the case, I remember it. Everyone said it was a robbery. Everyone was meant to say that. Ernesto pressed the back of his hand against his mouth for a moment. Ramon, this isn't a crime lord with a grudge. This is a sitting United States Senator with committee access, federal contacts, and every reason in the world to make sure that drive disappears and everyone who has touched it disappears with it. I know. The Vasquez family. I know Ernesto. If Whitmore has been monitoring Mora's operation and he sees that the drive has surfaced, he already knows, Ramon said. The call to Maria's phone at 3 in the morning. That wasn't Mora's people. Mora's people don't work that clean. That was someone with access to cell tower data, which means federal resources. He paused. Whitmore's people were watching the road last night too, not just Mora. Ernesto stared at him. They were both watching. 2 separate sets of eyes on the same road at midnight, Ramon said. Mora's crew watching for Roberto, Whitmore's people watching Mora's crew, and then a child runs out of the fishy, and I get out of a car, and suddenly there is a third variable that neither of them planned for. You, Ernesto said. Me, Ramon said. And now I have the drive, and Whitmore knows I have it, or he will within hours, and the question is whether I can get it into the right hands before he decides that the cleanest solution is to remove the variable. Who are you calling? Ernesto said. You said you knew someone. Thomas Reed, Ramon said. Ernesto blinked. The DOJ investigator. Former DOJ. He left 2 years ago after his Mora investigation got shut down from above. He went private. He has been building a case independently ever since, without federal resources, without committee and oversight, without anyone above him who can pick up a phone and make it disappear. Ramon looked at him. He has been looking for exactly what is on that drive for exactly 2 years. And more importantly, Whitmore cannot touch him. He's outside the apparatus. You trust him, Ernesto said. I trust that he wants Whitmore more than he wants anything else, Ramon said. That's sufficient. He was already dialing. Thomas Reed answered on the second ring, which told Ramon he had been awake, which told Ramon that Reed had already heard something, which told Ramon that the window was shorter than he had estimated. Ortega, Reed said. His voice was careful and wide awake and carried underneath it the specific quality of a man who has spent 2 years waiting for a particular phone call and is now possibly receiving it. I was wondering when you'd call. You heard, Ramon said. I heard a name. Roberto Vasquez. I've had his name on a board in my office for 14 months. I knew he existed. I knew he had access. I didn't know where he'd gone. A pause. Where is he? Safe, Ramon said. He has the drive. The silence on the line lasted 3 seconds. Then the complete files. Complete and verified. 4 years of accounts, 12 shell companies, the Harrigan payment authorization. And Whitmore, Reed said. Ramon stopped. You knew about Whitmore. I suspected, Reed said. I couldn't prove it. The Harrigan connection pointed upward, but I couldn't find the ceiling. His voice shifted something in it that was not excitement exactly, but the closest a disciplined man gets to it. If Whitmore's name is in those files in writing, payment authorization, Ramon said. His signature digitized, cross-referenced to an account Mora has been using for contracted work since 2021. That's enough, Reed said immediately. Ortega, that is enough to move, tonight. Another pause faster now, the rhythm of a man thinking in real time. But Whitmore will know the drive has surfaced. His people have been monitoring Mora's operation. They called a child's phone at 3 this morning, Ramon said. They already know I'm involved. Then we have hours, not days, Reed said. Where are you? I need assurances first, Ramon said. The Vasquez family, full immunity for Roberto, protected status for the wife and daughter, permanent. I can deliver that. In writing, before anything changes hands. Ortega. In writing Radimanabin, tonight, I don't move on a handshake when a senator is involved. A short pause. Fine. In writing, where do you want to meet? I'll come to you, Ramon said. Give me 2 hours. I need to handle something first. What's something? The family needs to be moved again, Ramon said. Different building, different address. If Whitmore's people had the original safe house location, then this one may already be compromised. I can provide a location, Reed said. I have a secure property. No, Ramon said. Your property is documented, your name is known. I'll use my own. He paused. 2 hours, Reed. Don't move, don't call anyone. Don't tell anyone what I just told you. You don't trust my contacts, Reed said. I trust you, Ramon said. I don't trust anyone standing near you until those files are in federal hands and Whitmore is in a room he can't leave. He ended the call. He looked at Ernesto. Get Marco up here, he said. We move the family in 20 minutes. Inside the apartment, Roberto had been talking. He had started talking the moment Ramon left in the quiet and halting way of a man releasing pressure that has been building for 3 months, and Elena had sat across from him at the kitchen table and listened without interrupting, because she had learned in 10 years of marriage that Roberto needed to get to the truth in his own way, and stopping him in the middle only pushed it deeper. He had started with the money. The discrepancy he had found 14 months ago in Mora's books, a series of transactions that didn't match any of the shell company accounts he managed, routed through a separate channel he had never been given access to, but had found anyway because Roberto Vasquez was very good at his job, and numbers talked to him the way words talk to other people. He had found the channel, he had followed it, and at the end of it he had found a name that made his hands go cold at his desk at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. He had not told Elena. He told her that now looking at the table, and he told her why, because knowing would have put her in danger, because he needed time to figure out what to do, because every person he thought about going to turned out to be either on Mora's payroll or connected to Whitmore's operation or both. He told her about the 4 months he had spent building a copy of every relevant file before he ran, about the contact at the DOJ that he had cultivated for 6 months before discovering the man's name was in Mora's records, about the 2 months after that when he had simply been moving, staying nowhere more than a week, carrying the drive in his jacket every day and sleeping with it under whatever passed for a pillow. I should have called, he said. He was still looking at the table. I know, I've said it in my head every day, but every time I thought about it, you were afraid they'd trace it, Elena said. Yes. You were afraid calling us would lead them to us. Yes. He looked up. Elena, I know how it sounds. I know what it looked like from where you were standing. I know what Maria thinks. I know what last night. He stopped. His voice broke. He rebuilt it. I watched you from the trees. I watched what they did, and I couldn't. He pressed his fist against the table hard enough to make the surface shake. I could not move. If I had come out, they would have taken the drum and there would have been nothing. No leverage, no evidence, nothing to hold over Mora or Whitmore or any of them. You and Maria would have been... I understand the logic, Elena said. Do you... His eyes were raw, because there is no version of that sentence that makes it acceptable. I can explain it 1,000 different ways, and it still means I stood in the trees and watched my wife. Roberto. Her voice was quiet and absolute. Stop. He stopped. She looked at him across the table. Her wrists were wrapped. Her jaw was bruised. She had the look of a woman who had been through something that would leave marks that didn't show on the outside, and she was sitting straight, and her eyes were clear, and she was looking at her husband with an expression that held everything. The 3 months of silence the night on the tree, the terror and the anger, and the love that had not, despite everything, managed to die, though it had come close enough to feel the heat. I understand why you did what you did, she said. That doesn't mean it was right, and it doesn't mean we're past it. She paused. But I also know that you spent 3 months carrying something that could get you killed, and you came back and you sent someone to get us out. She looked at him steadily. That matters. It doesn't fix everything, but it matters. Roberto looked at her for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said. The words were completely simple and completely insufficient, and he knew it and said them anyway. I know, Elena said. Maria had been sitting on the bed through this entire exchange, listening with that complete unblinking attention she gave to things she was filing away. When Elena looked over at her, Maria met her eyes and nodded once, a small gesture that said more than any words available to an 8-year-old would have managed. She had heard it. She had understood it. She was going to need time with it. But she had heard it. Then the knock came. 3, 2, 1. Elena was up before Maria could move. Marco came in first, then Ramon behind him, and the quality of Ramon's movement had changed tighter, faster. The deliberate slowness of before replaced by something more compressed, the gait of a man running a clock. We're moving, Ramon said. All of you. 10 minutes. What happened? Roberto was on his feet. Nothing yet, Ramon said, and I intend to keep it that way. He looked at Roberto directly. The name on your drive. Whitmore. His people had the location of the first safe house. This one may be next. He picked up the clean phone from the table and handed it to Elena. Keep that on you. Don't put it down. Where are we going? Elena said. One of my properties. Not in my name, not in any name that connects to me, not in any database that a federal contact could run in the next 3 hours. He looked at Maria. Can you be ready in 5 minutes? I've been ready since last night, Maria said. Something moved across Ramon's face. Not quite a smile. Good. Roberto stepped toward him. The drive. What are you doing with it? Meeting someone tonight who can move on it, Ramon said. Legally, outside the federal apparatus that Whitmore controls. Who tamo? Thomas Reed. Roberto went still. I know that name. I know you do, Ramon said. He left the DOJ. He doesn't need federal resources, Ramon said. He has the right contacts in the right places, and more importantly, he has spent 2 years building a case that exists entirely outside Whitmore's reach. When I hand him those files tonight, the chain of custody is clean, the documentation is independent, and Whitmore cannot make a call to shut it down because there ain't no one above Reed to receive that call. He held Roberto's gaze. This is the landing you were looking for. This is why you took the drive. Roberto looked at him. You trust Reed. I trust his motivation, Ramon said. He wants Whitmore. He has wanted Whitmore for 2 years. What I'm handing him tonight is the culmination of 2 years of his life. Men don't betray that. He paused. Not even careful men. And Reed is careful. Roberto absorbed this. Then he nodded, once firmly. The nod of a man who has been carrying a decision alone for 3 months and is finally deliberately sharing the weight of it. Okay, he said. Okay. Get your things, Ramon said. Whatever you have. Let's go. They were in the cars in 9 minutes. 2 vehicles this time, Ramon and Ernesto in the first with the drive locked in a case in the interior pocket of Ramona's jacket, Roberto, and Elena and Maria in the second with Marco driving, Luis riding. Maria sat between her parents in the back seat, and for the first 7 minutes of the drive, nobody said anything, and then her mother took one of her hands and her father took the other, and Maria looked straight ahead and held on to both of them and did not let go. The new location was 40 minutes outside the city. A house, not a safe house in the institutional sense, but a house that belonged to no one traceable in a neighborhood where people kept their curtains drawn and their questions to themselves. Ramon walked them and checked every room with a speed and thoroughness that suggested he had memorized the layout on a previous visit and posted Luis at the front and Marco at the back. He stood in the kitchen with Roberto for 3 minutes, going through the specifics of the meeting with Reed location time, what Roberto needed to be prepared to confirm in writing as the source of the files. Roberto listened. He asked 2 questions. He answered the things Ramon needed him to answer. The efficiency of it, 2 men who had known each other for less than 4 hours operating with the focus of people who understand that time is the rarest resource in the room, was the kind of efficiency that comes from both parties knowing exactly what is at stake. One more thing, Roberto said when they had covered the logistics. Whitmore. When Reed moves on him, how fast does it go? Fast, Ramon said. Once those files are in Reed's hands and independently verified, he moves within 24 hours. He has to. Once Whitmore knows the files are in play, every hour he waits is an hour Whitmore uses to build a counter-narrative. And Mora is secondary, Ramon said. Mora is a tool. Whitmore is the architect. When Whitmore goes, Mora's protection disappears, and then Mora faces what he's built without a ceiling above him. He paused. Mora will make a deal. Men like Mora always make a deal when the ceiling disappears. And the family, Roberto said. His voice dropped. Elena and Maria, after tonight, when it's done. Ramon looked at him for a moment. Immunity is in the agreement I'm getting from Reed, in writing. Your name, Elena's name, Maria's name. Protected status, new documentation if you need it, full federal protection during the case and after. He held Roberto's gaze. They will be safe. And you, Roberto said, you're in those files too, aren't you? Some of those transactions Mora ran, they went through channels that connect to your operation. Ramon was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said. Reed knows that. Reedy has known about my operation for 2 years, Ramon said. He has never moved on it because he has been focused on something larger. Tonight, when I hand him Whitmore, we will have a conversation about what that means for me going forward. He paused. It is a conversation I am prepared to have. Roberto stared at him. You're going to give yourself up. I'm going to have a conversation, Ramon said. The outcome of that conversation will be what it will be. That is not your concern. It is my concern, Roberto said. You've put yourself in the middle of this for a family you didn't know 3 days ago. For a child who stopped your car. Roberto, Ramon's voice was quiet and final. Go be with your family. I have a drive to deliver and a meeting to get to. Roberto held his gaze for one more moment. Then he said, thank you for what you did in those woods, for what you're doing now. He paused, for getting out of the car. Ramon said nothing. He nodded once and moved toward the door. Elena was in the hallway. She had been there long enough that he understood she had heard at least part of what was said in the kitchen. She looked at him with those clear, careful eyes. You knew coming into this meeting with Reed that it might cost you something, she said. It was not a question. Yes, he said. And you're going anyway. Yes. She looked at him for a moment. Ramon thought about the answer. Not the immediate answer, the tactical one, but the real one, the one that had been forming somewhere underneath everything else since a barefoot child in a torn nightgown had grabbed his jacket and refused to let the world keep moving without her mother in it. Because some things, once you see them, you cannot unsee them, he said. And some decisions, once you make them, define everything that comes after. He paused. I have made a great many decisions in my life that I would not defend. This is not one of them. Elena held his gaze. Then she stepped forward and she put her hand, wrapped wrist and all, flat against his chest. For one moment, the gesture of a person who wants to make a thing real and physical and undeniable. Come back, she said. Whatever happens with Reed, come back and tell us. I will, he said. Maria will not sleep until you do, Elena said. Tell her to sleep anyway, Ramon said. Tell her the math is working in our favor. Elena almost smiled. She'll want to verify the math herself. I know, he said. Tell her I know that too. He walked out. Thomas Reed was waiting in the back of a coffee shop 3 blocks from his office, which he had chosen because it had 3 exits and sight lines to the street in 2 directions, which told Ramon everything he needed to know about how seriously Reed was taking the next hour. He stood when Ramon came in, and they shook hands, a firm, brief grip, 2 men acknowledging each other across a line that neither of them fully stood on one side of. Ramon sat down. He placed the drive on the table between them. He placed his hand flat on top of it. Documentation first, he said. Reed produced an envelope. Inside was a single typed page signed, notarized with 3 names on it. Roberto Vasquez, Elena Vasquez, Maria Vasquez. Full immunity, protected status, relocation assistance. Clean and complete. Ramon read it twice. Then he looked at Reed. My operation, he said. Reed held his gaze. One conversation after the case. On the record. You tell me everything I don't already know about how Mora's transactions ran through your channels. In exchange, I give you what I can give you. He paused. I can't promise nothing. I can promise that what you did tonight will be a material on the record, and that counts. It counts with who, Ramon said. With me, Reed said simply, and with the people who will write the history of this case. Ramon was quiet for a moment. Then he lifted his hand off the drive. Reed picked it up. He looked at it. He looked at Ramon. You know what this means, he said. When this comes out, Whitmore the judge, all of it, it's going to be the largest corruption case this state has seen in 30 years. I know, Ramon said. People are going to want to know where it came from, how it surfaced. A child stopping a car in the fog. Leave the child out of it, Ramon said. His voice was not a request. Reed looked at him. She'll be protected. She is not a source. She is not a witness. She is an 8-year-old girl who ran through the dark to save her mother. Ramon held his gaze. Leave her out of every report, every document, every account of this case. Her name does not appear. Reed nodded. Done. Say it, Ramon said. Maria Vasquez's name does not appear in any document related to this case. Reed said. Done. Ramon stood. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at Reed with the complete quiet authority of a man who has just done something he will likely pay for and has made his peace with the payment. You have 48 hours before Whitmore understands what's happening, Ramon said. Don't waste them. I never waste things like this, Reed said. Ramon walked out without looking back. Yeah. The night outside was cold and clear. He sat in the car for a moment before telling Ernesto to drive. He was not, he realized, thinking about Whitmore or Reed or the drive or any of the logistics that would now unspool over the next 48 hours with or without his direct involvement. He was thinking about a clearing in the fog, about a child who had memorized the roots in the trees and run through everything she was afraid of because her mother was on the other side of it. He was thinking about the way she had held her father's hand without being asked, just quietly reached over and taken it, like forgiveness was not a decision, but a reflex. He had not had anything like that in his life. Not once. Not in all the years of navigating a world built on leverage and calculation and the careful management of who owed what to whom. He had not had a single relationship that was not at its foundation about something other than itself. And a child he had known for 48 hours had grabbed his jacket and looked at him and said, I trust you, like it was the most natural thing in the world to say to a man whose name people said quietly. Drive, he said. Ernesto drove. His phone buzzed. A text from the clean number he had given Elena. 4 words, no punctuation. She is still awake. Ramon looked at the message for a moment. Then he typed back. Tell her the math worked. He put the phone in his pocket. 3 seconds later, it buzzed again. He took it out, read it. She says she already knew. Something moved in his chest. It was quiet and unexpected, and it settled there without asking permission, the way the most permanent things always do. He put the phone away. Outside, the city moved past the windows, all its lights and noise and motion, all its 10,000 separate stories running alongside each other without touching. And somewhere in a house at the edge of it, an 8.5-year-old girl who had stopped being afraid of the dark was waiting to hear that the man who got out of the car had come back out of it again. He was going to make sure she heard it. Ramon came back at 2:47 in the morning. He knocked 3 times, then 2, then 1, and before the last knock finished, Maria was already at the door. Not because she had been standing there, she had been sitting on the floor with her back against it, which was close enough to the same thing. She unlocked it and pulled it open and looked at him, and the first thing she did was look at his hands, both of them, the way you check a person for damage before you check their face. Both hands, clean, present. The math worked, she said. I told you it would, he said. She stepped back and let him in. The house was quiet, but nobody in it was asleep. Elena was at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold an hour ago. Roberta was beside her, not touching her, giving her exactly the amount of space she had indicated she needed, which was the distance of 1 chair between them, close enough to reach, far enough to breathe. Ernesto came in behind Ramon and stationed himself near the door with the natural efficiency of a man who had been doing this for 15 years and did it now the way other people blinked. Ramon sat down at the table. He looked at Elena, then Roberto. Then he said it clean and fast, the way he said everything. Reedy has the drive. The immunity agreement is signed and notarized. All 3 names. The case moves within 48 hours. Whitmore will not have time to build a counter-narrative before the documentation is independently verified and in the hands of people he cannot reach. He paused. It's done. Roberto let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for 3 months. It came out ragged and long, and it shook slightly at the end, and he pressed both palms flat on the table and looked at them like he was verifying they were still there. Elena didn't make a sound. She closed her eyes for one moment. When she opened them, they were very bright, and she blinked twice quickly, and then she was herself again, steady, clear, present. Mora, she said. Mora loses his ceiling the moment Whitmore is in custody, Ramon said. Without Whitmore's protection, Mora faces a federal racketeering and without a single friend above him. He will make a deal within 72 hours of Whitmore's arrest. It's what men like Mora do. He held her gaze. He will not come after your family. You are not useful to him anymore. And more importantly, you are documented. Your names are in Reed's files. Anything that happens to any of you now points directly at the people Reed is already building a case against. We're protected by the existence of the case, Elena said. Yes. And when the case closes, the immunity agreement is permanent. It doesn't expire with the case. He looked at her steadily. I made sure of that before I put the drive on the table. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Something moved through her face. Not relief, not yet, because relief was too simple a word for what a person felt when 3 months of fear began to loosen its grip. And it didn't happen all at once, but in degrees, like pressure, releasing from something that has been compressed too long. It moved through her slowly, and she let it sitting very still at the kitchen table at 3 a.m, with her wrapped wrists and her bruised jaw, and her daughter standing 6 feet away, watching her with those enormous, careful eyes. Okay, Elena said quietly. Okay. And then Maria said, what about you? The question landed in the room the way Maria's questions always landed, directly with a cushioning that aimed at the exact center of the thing everyone else was navigating around. Ramon looked at her. What about me? Reed, Maria said. He knows about your operation. You told my father you were going to have a conversation with him about what your operation connected to in those files. She held his gaze. What happens to you? Maria, Roberto said. I want to know, Maria said. She did not look at her father. She kept her eyes on Ramon. He came back and he told us everything is okay for us. I want to know if everything is okay for him. Ramon looked at her for a moment. Then he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down so they were at the same level the way he had done on the road in the fog, and he folded his hands on the table and he told her the truth. Reed and I have an agreement, he said. I tell him what I know about how Mora's money moved through my channels. In exchange, he gives me what consideration he can. He paused. It means there will be a process, legal, formal. I will have to account for certain things. Will you go to prison? Maria said. The table was very quiet. I don't know, Ramon said. Possibly, for a time. He kept his voice even. It depends on how the process goes, on what Reed can and can't offer, on what the full picture looks like when everything is on the table. That's not fair, Maria said. Her voice was flat and direct and not childish at all. You got out of the car. You went into the woods. You cut my mother down and you faced Cutter and you got the debt canceled and you moved us 3 times and you handed Reed the drive that's going to take down a senator. You did all of that and you might go to prison for it. I might go to prison for things I did before that, Ramon said. Not for any of what I did this week. But it wouldn't have happened without this week, Maria said. Reed wouldn't have the drive. You wouldn't be having a conversation with him at all. Maria, Elena said softly. I'm not wrong, Maria said. She was still looking at Ramon. No, he said. You're not wrong. Then it's not fair. No, he agreed. It's not. Maria stared at him. Her jaw was tight in the way it got when she was working through something that didn't have a clean resolution, when the math produced an answer she didn't accept. Is there anything we can do? She said. You've already done it, Ramon said. You stopped the car. Everything after that is what it is. That's not enough, Maria said. Maria. His voice was gentle in a way it had not been with anyone else in the last 72 hours. You ran barefoot through the dark, and you stopped a convoy, and you saved your mother's life. You held your family together for 3 months while your father was gone. You assessed a stranger in 30 seconds in the hall and made the right call about whether to trust him. He paused. You are 8.5 years old. You have done enough. You are allowed to let the rest of it be what it is. Maria looked at him for a long, hard moment. Then something in her face shifted. Not surrender, never surrender, but the particular adjustment of someone who was filing a thing away in the category of not finished, but set aside for now. She nodded once. Okay, she said, but I want you to know that I think it's not fair. I want that on the record. It's on the record, Ramon said. Son. Roberto spoke next, and what he said changed the room. He had been quiet through the exchange between Ramon and Maria, sitting beside Elena with his hands on the table, and he had the look of a man who had been doing arithmetic in his head and had just reached a sum he needed to say out loud before it became something he carried alone again. There's something I didn't tell you, he said. He was looking at Ramon, about the drive. Elena looked at him. There's a file on it that I didn't fully read, Roberto said. I told you I skimmed it. I found the accounts, the Harrigan authorization in Whitmore's name. But there's a subfolder I opened and closed because the file names didn't match anything I recognized at the time. He paused. But when you were talking to Reed tonight, I was sitting here thinking about those file names and I finally placed them. What are they? Ramon said. His voice had shifted back to the operational register, the one without warmth, the one that processed information before anything else. They're property records, Roberto said. Shell companies holding properties, but not commercial properties. He looked at Ramon steadily. Safe houses, 12 addresses in 6 states, properties that Whitmore's operation has been using as staging locations. He paused. Including 2 in this state, within 50 miles of where we're sitting right now. Silence. You think one of them might be used to come after us? Elena said. Not a question. I think that if Whitmore's people know the drive has surfaced and they know roughly where it went, they will want to move before Reed can verify the files, Roberto said. And if they have a staging location nearby. Ramon was already on his phone and thought, he was dialing Reed before Roberto finished the sentence. Reed answered in one ring. Ortega. The drive has a subfolder with property addresses, Ramon said. Whitmore's staging locations. I need you to pull those addresses right now, cross-reference with this state, and tell me if any of them are within 50 miles of the city. The sound of typing, fast, continuous. Then 2 addresses. One is a warehouse district east side. One is a pause. One is 4 miles from your current location. Ramon was on his feet. How do you know my current location? I don't, Reed said. I'm reading from the file. How close is that to where you are? Too close, Ramon said. How fast can you move? I've had a team on standby since you left, Reed said. I told you I don't waste things like this. Give me 20 minutes. You have 15, Ramon said. And Reed, when your team moves on that address, I need them to understand that there is a family at a residential location nearby. Civilian, children present. Understood, Reed said. 15 minutes. The call ended. Ramon looked at Marco and Luis. One word. Positions. Both men moved without a sound. Elena was already standing, her hand on Maria's shoulder. Roberto was beside them both, and for the first time since he had walked back into their lives, he was standing in a way that matched the 3 months of running, alert, ready, every unnecessary thing stripped away. What do we do? Elena said. You stay away from the windows, Ramon said. You stay together. You do not open this door for any reason unless it's me or Ernesto or the pattern. He looked at Maria. You understand? Yes, Maria said. Good. He looked at her for one extra second. You've done the hard part. Let me do this part. The next 12 minutes were the longest of the entire 72 hours. Not because of noise, there was almost none. That was the thing about the way men like the ones Ramon dealt with operated. There was no dramatic confrontation in the hallway, no exchange of gunfire that rattled the walls. There was only the silence of people who knew what they were doing, moving through the dark with professional economy, and then the silence of a situation being resolved, and then a different quality of silence, entirely the silence that comes after. Maria sat between her parents on the edge of the bed, with one hand in her mother's and one hand in her father's, and she counted. She had been counting since the beginning time steps breaths. She counted now, 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Then 3 knocks, 2-1. She was at the door. Ramon, Ernesto behind him, both present, both whole. It's clear, Ramon said. Maria looked at him. The people from the address, Ride's team took them, Ramon said. 3 individuals, Whitmore's people. They were moving toward this location. He paused. They didn't get here. Because of the file, Roberto remembered, Maria said. Yes, Ramon said. Because of that. Maria turned and looked at her father. Roberto was standing in the middle of the room, and the expression on his face, the specific expression of a man who has just understood that the thing he spent 3 months carrying, the thing that cost him his family's safety and his own freedom, and 90 days of running, had just in the last 15 minutes directly saved the people he ran to protect, was something that didn't have a simple name. Elena saw it too. She crossed the room and she put her hand on Roberto's arm, and she didn't say anything because there was nothing to say that the gesture didn't already say better. Roberto looked at his wife. He looked at his daughter. He looked at the wrapped wrists and the bruised jaw and the man standing in the doorway in a jacket that his daughter had been wearing for 3 days like it was armor, and something in him that had been wound tight for 3 months released all at once, and he sat down on the edge of the bed and put his face in his hands. Not from grief, from the other thing. The thing that only arrives when the worst possible outcome has failed to happen, and you are finally allowed to understand how close it came. Mariah went and sat beside him. She didn't put her arms around him. She just sat right next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched, and she stayed there, and that was enough. Reed called at 5:43 in the morning. Ramon took the call in the kitchen, and he listened for 4 minutes with his hand flat on the counter and his eyes on the middle distance. And when he ended the call, he stood still for a moment before he went to find Elena. She was in the hallway. She had heard his voice change. "Tell me," she said. "Whitmore's office was raided an hour ago," Ramon said. "Federal agents Reed's contacts independent of the committee's oversight. The drive has been verified. The Harrigan authorization has been authenticated." He looked at her. "Dale Whitmore was taken into custody at 5:15 this morning." Elena pressed her hand flat against the wall. "Mora," she said. "His lawyers called Ridadi's contact at 5:30, Ramon said, 45 minutes after Whitmore's arrest. "He's making a deal." He paused. "Mora is finished. The deal he makes will cost him everything except his freedom, and even that is conditional." He held her gaze. "It's over, Elena. The case is live. The arrest is made. There is no one left with a reason to come after your family." Elena looked at him. Then she looked down the hallway toward the bedroom where her husband and daughter were, and she breathed in slowly and breathed out and breathed in again. And this time, when she exhaled, the thing that had been sitting in her chest since a night on a tree in the fog came out with it, not all at once, but enough to feel the space it left behind. She looked back at Ramon. "And you," she said, "what happens now for you?" "I have a meeting with Reed this afternoon," Ramon said. "The conversation we discussed. Are you ready for it?" "Yes," he said. He said it simply, without drama, the way a person says something they have made their peace with. "I've been many things, Elena. I've made many choices that I cannot undo and would not expect anyone to forgive. But this week I made a choice I can stand behind." He paused. "That changes something, not in the legal sense, but in the only sense that ultimately matters." Elena looked at him for a long moment. "You know what Maria told me last night," she said. "While you were at the meeting with Reed, she sat with me for an hour, and she said that she didn't stop your car because she thought you would help her. She said she stopped your car because she had run out of other options and you were there." She paused. "She said she prayed while she ran. She said she asked for the right person to be on that road, and then you were." Ramon said nothing. "She doesn't think that was an accident," Elena said. "And I'm not sure I do either." "I don't believe in accidents," Ramon said carefully. "I believe in decisions. I got out of the car. That was a decision." "Yes," Elena said. "But why did you get out?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because she wasn't screaming for herself," he said finally. "She was screaming for her mother. There isn't a version of me that stays in the car for that." He looked at Elena. "I don't know what that says about me, given everything else." "I know what it says about you," Elena said. He held her gaze. "It says you were the right person to be on that road," she said. Maria found him 20 minutes later, It is sitting at the kitchen table with coffee that Ernesto had made from something he had found in the back of a cabinet, and she sat down across from him in the chair that had become over the last 3 days specifically hers. She put Ramon's jacket on the table between them, folded neatly. She had clearly taken some time with the folding. "I should give this back," she said. He looked at the jacket. "Keep it," he said. "It's worth more than everything in my room," she said. "I know," he said. "Keep it anyway." Maria looked at the jacket, then at him. "Are you going to be okay?" she said. "I'm going to have to answer for some things," he said. "Whether that constitutes okay depends on the outcome. And if the outcome isn't good, then I will handle it," he said, "the way I handle things." "By being the most controlled person in the room," Maria said. He looked at her. "Yes." "That works," Maria said seriously. "I've seen it work. It worked in the woods. It worked with Cutter. It worked with Reed." She paused. "It'll work in whatever room comes next." "You think so," Ramon said. "I know so," Maria said. "I trust you. I said that 3 days ago, and I still mean it." She held his gaze. "And I don't say things I don't mean." "No," he said. "You don't." "So." She put both hands flat on the table, the gesture so similar to the gesture she had made on the hood of his car. 3 nights ago, that had hit him with the force of something complete, a circle closing, a thing returning to its beginning and finding it changed. "You came back." "I told you I would," he said. "You told my mother you would," she said. "I didn't hear it directly." "I'm telling you," he said. Maria nodded slowly, satisfied. The nod of someone receiving a piece of information they had already factored in but needed on the record. "Okay," she said. Then Ramon. "Yes." "Thank you," she said, "for getting out of the car." He looked at her for a long moment. At this 8.5-year-old girl who had stopped being afraid of the dark and started being something else. Something he didn't have a word for yet, but that he understood instinctively was the rarest kind of human quality, the kind that most people spent their whole lives hoping to encounter once. "Thank you for stopping it," he said. She picked up the jacket from the table. She held it for a moment, and then she put it back on, pulling it around her shoulders the way she had worn it since the road, not like borrowed clothing, but like something that belonged to her now, something she had earned. She stood up. "I'm going to go sit with my parents," was said by most Swinch, and he said she went. And Ramon Ortega sat alone in the kitchen at 6 in the morning with the coffee going cold in his hand, and he thought about a child running through the fog with bare feet and a torn nightgown, and a certainty that the world was not allowed to take her mother. Not tonight, not like this. Not while she still had breath and speed, and 2 hands willing to stop whatever needed stopping. He thought about the moment he had stepped out of the car and looked down at her and understood in the space between 1 second and the next that something was being asked of him that had nothing to do with strategy or leverage or the careful management of outcomes. He thought about the rope falling, about Elena's first breath, about Maria's face in sleep, all the fear gone out of it for the first time in 5 years without a light on. He had spent 20 years building a world that rests on control and calculation and the complete absence of anything that could be used against him. And a barefoot child had dismantled the entire architecture of it in 30 seconds flat, with nothing but her hands on his hood and the rawest, most irreducible human ask in the language. Please, someone help her. He had helped, and it had cost him things, and it would cost him more. And he had looked at the bill clearly and found to his own surprise that he did not regret a single line item. At 6:45, Ernesto appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Car's ready," he said. "Reedy confirmed the meeting for this afternoon. 3 o'clock. "I know," Ramon said. "You ready?" Ramon finished his coffee. He set the cup down. He stood up with the same deliberate economy of movement he brought to everything, and he straightened his jacket, and he looked at the hallway where the sound of Roberto's voice and Elena's voice and Maria's voice moved together in the low ordinary music of a family, being a family, talking about nothing, talking about everything, the conversation that had no stakes except the only stakes that ever actually mattered. "Yes," he said. He walked out of that house and into whatever came next, carrying 3 months of someone else's fear and 3 days of his own choices and one very specific, permanent, unalterable knowledge that on a fog-covered road in the middle of the night, when a child had needed the right person to be there, he had been there. He had gotten out of the car. And that was the truest thing he had ever done.